What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. So today's video is a fun one as well. We're doing another series review. I know there's been a ton of series reviews lately. I hope you guys are enjoying them because honestly, it has been a month of series. There have been so many. And if you watched the reading recap for what I read in the month of April, then I'm sure you guys got a glimpse of all the different series that were included, which is why all of these little reviews are coming up, because I read a lot of books this month and I did not want, or I shouldn't say like this month, but I read a lot of books in April and a lot of them were young adult series that I've been wanting to get to and I've been wanting to read, and it was just such a pleasure and such a joy to actually be able to do so. So I'm super excited about that. Today is April 29th and I'm currently on the last book on the TBR list that I wanted to get through for the month of April, which is Games Untold by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. It is the final book, the novella, that is part of the Inheritance Games series. I was originally planning on reading The Grandest Game as well, and then I realized that's actually a spin-off series of its own, so I'm not going to be reading that one this month, as I'm sure you guys saw already in the recap. But the new book in that series is releasing sometime in June or July, so I'll probably end up saving that for either later in the year or over the summertime. But that being said, let's get into the review. Actually, before we do that, just a quick intro. My name is Jaya. Welcome to the channel. I basically put out videos that have to do with books, fiction in particular. I have a fiction addiction, and if that is your affliction as well, then you're definitely in the right place. I put out videos every Wednesday and Sunday, primarily on bookish related content, every once in a while with a smattering of randomness as well. Today, I will be reviewing, in particular, the Renegades series. So if that sounds like it's your cup of tea, definitely stick around. If not, if you love books, you might find something else on the channel that you like. So definitely go check out some of the other videos. And if you are new here and you are enjoying yourself, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell. I would love to have you here as part of the community. For those of you that are returning, thank you so much for being here. It is an absolute pleasure to have you guys here to be able to talk about just the joy of reading and what it represents. And so I can't wait to share my thoughts. Now, this particular month of April, when I was reading, the theme was basically young adult series. And I specifically wanted to read these books because I feel like a lot of times, and I'm, by the way, in my 30s, almost about to be in my mid 30s. I'll be turning 34 this upcoming June. And so I feel like as I've grown older, a lot of times I do tend to gravitate towards adult fiction. But the thing that I've realized is a lot of adult fiction, like thrillers and things like that, not so much, but specifically romantasy and specifically romance, they're great, great books and the storylines can be beautiful, but they are also very heavy on spice. And it's not that I'm opposed to spice. I have no issues necessarily with reading spice as long as there is a purpose and it's well placed and it's not overdone. And some series do hit heavily on that. And sometimes I feel like it can overwhelm the plot. Whereas I feel like with a lot of young adult series, that's typically not the focus. They try to definitely show the banter and the development of the romance, and they definitely talk about young love and all those things, but it's not so spice driven. It's more character driven, and I really, really enjoy that. The other thing that I love about young adult books is a lot of them, especially the more recent authors that have released books, they actually talk about some very adult topics. It's very clear that these books are written more for high school, college type age kids, and I love that because I do think it speaks to a lot of societal views just in a more subtle way, I guess, and it's not as aggressive as some of the other books can be. And there are also books out there that are very, very beautiful that are adult fiction, but they're intense and they're designed to be intense. Examples being, Demon Copperhead or A Little Life. Those books, like I personally cannot handle that level of intensity. So getting books that kind of give me a glimpse of some of the things that children and other people can go through without that much graphic detail is also, I think, very powerful and moving, but without being so overwhelming that it's going to put me into depression. So that's kind of where this need for reading the young adult series came from. Also, a bunch of books released in April. And so one of the series in particular that I've been wanting to read actually released the final book in the series. And that's kind of what started this journey. So that being said, the series that we're going to be talking about today is the Renegades series by Marissa Meyer. You may know her more commonly for her Lunar series, which is the entire Cinder series. I have not read those books, but from my understandings, there are dystopian, sci-fi-esque versions of common fairy tales. So I believe like Cinder is supposed to be representation of Cinderella and so on and so forth. There are 5 books as far as I know in the Lunar Chronicles series. And I know that one was really popular. So when I was walking by, I wasn't necessarily pulled towards that series, but then I saw this one and I absolutely was intrigued. Then another YouTuber that I follow, Miss Sarah Caroli, she actually was talking about how she loved Renegades when she read it, and that actually is what gave me the push to pick it up. And so I ended up finishing this series, and not gonna lie, I finished all 3 books in 3 days because it was that good. It was very hard to not read this book. I was obsessed with the series. So a little bit of background. The Renegades universe is basically in a timeline where there are a few human beings who have become superheroes. Now, when they become superheroes and they develop these magical powers, initially they are not accepted and they are feared by the human regular population. And so war breaks out. Now, in the midst of this war, gangs and everything start developing and everyone is villains in the beginning. However, what ends up happening is within that, there is a group of villains known as the Renegades who decide that they want to position themselves in a position of power that allows them to protect the city and also prevent injury from other powerful villains, if you will. And so now you have superheroes versus villains being created. Now, in the midst of this, the book starts with the story of our main female character, Miss Nova. Nova is a young girl with a lovely, beautiful baby sister and 2 parents that absolutely adore her. Unfortunately, however, her uncle, who is related to her father, is actually one of the key arch villains who is basically initially fighting for the idea of equality for all superheroes or superpowered humans, and basically wants there to be an understandable appreciation for everyone to be free in the way that they want, but doesn't necessarily care what means he uses to get there. And so his father, like her father, becomes concerned about this situation and basically says, okay, like, I'll do what you ask, but secretly ends up teaming up with the Renegades in fear that his brother is crossing the line. This in turn leads to, this idea that they are still supportive of the uncle, but they also have allegiance to the Renegades. So they're kind of biding their time. They're being quiet. In the midst of all of this, there are also other villainous groups that are in play. So you have a bunch of different gangs that are in play. And there is understanding by one of the alternative gangs that not only is this man supporting the Renegades, but he also has a brother who is super powerful. So they think to themselves, we should take him out. So the book literally starts with a prologue telling us about how this poor family ends up being targeted. And Nova goes through some immense painful experiences in this process that allows her to really, what am I trying to say? She really starts to develop her powers at that point. They become more potent, and that's what allows her to survive. Now, in the midst of all of this, her uncle takes her in, and now she is part of his journey, and she is basically there hating on the Renegades because when she needed them, they did not show up. That is the premises of this book. So within this book, our other main character is Adrian. Adrian is the son of 2 of the main council members of the Renegades, who are also some of the founding members, who were the arch nemesis of the original villain, who also happens to be Nova's uncle. Now, in the midst of all of the overthrows that happen and the Renegades coming into power, Nova's uncle is severely hurt, and his cause ends up being scattered. So now you have a group of villains who are known as the Anarchists, who is the group that Nova is a part of. And her goal and the Anarchists' goal and her uncle's goal is to basically restore this idea that everyone deserves equality and there are no true good or evil people. It's more the fact that people were doing the things that they were doing in order to survive. And the Renegades do not deserve true power over everyone because no one elected them into power and all these other things. Meanwhile, Adrian, being the son of the council, fully believes in the Renegade cause, and he's basically out there being a superhero trying to take down villains like Nova and her Anarchy team that might otherwise be against the Renegades. So that is the plot line of the story. Now, throughout the course of the first book, you get to see a glimpse of the powers of the various anarchists. You get to see where Nova's allegiance lies, and you also get to see the sheer brilliance that she has in terms of being a strategic member of the group. And then she was assigned the role of killing the main captain. Naturally, things happen, and she ends up in a position where she's unable to finish her mission, and now she has to become a renegade in order to infiltrate their team to basically honor the death of her uncle. And that is where the Renegades book starts us off. It was so good. It was a lot of fun. The enemies to lovers vibes that was going on was so cute, and I absolutely loved the powers that the different characters had and like the visions that all of them had, like this idea that, you know, everybody has a little bit of good and a little bit of evil in them, and it's all about intention, but it's also the fact that you should know when you're crossing the line. And I think that was really beautifully portrayed in this book, and I do think this was extremely enjoyable. The book ends with Nova kind of committing to this idea of being an infiltrate for the Renegades, and she has gained their trust by the end of this book. It's a wonderful journey. I strongly recommend it. This book was a solid 3.5 stars for me. Book number 2 in the series is Arch Enemies. This book, I think, was even more fun. At this point, I do strongly suggest you get off of the video if you don't want any spoilers, because it is a key component of this book. So if you don't want spoilers, please, please, please get off at this point. But before you do, I will tell you this is also a 4-star read. It is absolutely excellent, and this one continues the saga. There's even more romance and even more crazy things that are happening, and you have even more subterfuge that is happening throughout the course of the book. Okay, at this point, please sign off if you don't want more spoilers. If you've read the series and you want to know thoughts, please continue watching. So in Arch Enemies, I think the thing that I loved about this is the fact that now that the detonator has passed away and Nova has kind of established herself as a lead renegade and she has all the plans in action, we are obviously delivered a delicious piece of truth, which is that Ace Anarchy is still alive, and her goal is basically to get him the helmet that allows him to control all of the buildings around him and basically act on his telekinesis. I think what was particularly powerful about this book for me is the idea that you know, Nova is kind of realizing that the Renegades are actually not all bad. So I think that was really fun to see. I think it was also really interesting to see her reaction to Agent N and the fact that it was basically being used to strip people of their power without any trial. I also think it was really interesting to hear the story of all the other Renegades and how they became Renegades in the first place, which I know was more discussed in the first book, but I also think Winston's story, when that eventually comes out, was also very interesting. I also think it's really cool to see the friendships that she truly has and the relationships she's truly made in both the Anarchy group as well as in the Renegades group. I think it's also really beautiful to see Nova's relationship with Max continuing to grow as she realizes that he is the bandit and he's capable of stealing powers, but yet she still wants to get to know him and be close to him because she realizes he's a beautiful boy. I think it's also really cute, the scene where Adrian draws out the scene for her on the walls and like basically recreates this dream that she had just to be close to him. Their first date was so cute to me. I absolutely loved how welcoming both the fathers of Adrian are in terms of welcoming her into their home. And I just think it was really cool to see her progression as a character and kind of understanding that not everything is black and white and it doesn't need to be. I also think the ending of this book was absolutely phenomenal. I think the intelligence with which she and her team are able to basically disable the main evil Renegades was excellent. And I also think it was super cool to watch her brilliance in just being able to come up with ways to deploy Agent N on her attackers in the first place, as well as protect herself. And I loved the final fight scene at the end. I just think it was so beautiful that she still took a moment to save Max, and Max recognized it. I think that was really, really beautiful. I just think in general, this book was a lot of fun. I think the other part of this book that was really interesting is seeing more of Adrian's background and how he became the Sentinel. I think the little hints that they leave behind in regards to the drawings that he made when he was a child and his continued research into who murdered his mother was also interesting to see. And I do think it was really fascinating to see Nova have a moment of recognition. No, she doesn't have that recognition yet. Scratch that. But I do think it was really interesting to see Nova kind of becoming closer to Adrian as well. So I think in general, this was a great book. Dana's character was, I think, also really interesting as she's stuck in her swarm state and she's not able to tell the Renegades what's going on and what Nova has kind of been up to. I think her way of kind of following Nova to figure out what's going on, her suspicions were also very justified. I think it was just very interesting to read. I think it was also cool to see how Nova tests to see whether or not she still has powers after meeting Max. In general, just a great book. And I just think this story continues to grow. And I loved this continual discussion of gray areas and the idea of what's important for the greater good. At what point are you crossing a line? All of these things, which I think is a true concern when it comes to politics. And it is something that needs to be discussed, because at what point do you draw a line? And at what point is it okay in the name of the greater good? So I do think this was a very, very powerful book, and I really enjoyed it. And of course, outside of that, the romance and the banter was just too cute. So this book was a solid 4-star read for me. Next up, we have Supernova. Now, this one packed a punch. Let me tell you. I mean, honestly, let's talk about the revelations. Like the fact that we find out that her uncle is actually evil. I mean, let's be real. We did kind of call that, but I think that was really fascinating. The coolest thing to me was the origin of phobia, though. I think that was super, super cool. I also think it was beautiful to see the heartfelt moment between Nova and the captain at the top of the spire when she basically yells at him saying, like, where were you? And he explains what happened and that her uncle kind of orchestrated everything that happened that basically led to her being her. I think it was also bittersweet when she realized that, like, her uncle looked at her for her powers and not necessarily for her as a person. And I think it was also really sweet how quickly the Renegades do accept her. I also think that part of the book that was really interesting to me is like when she goes into jail and when Narcissa actually steps up and takes on the blame for being Nightmare in order to get Nova released. And I think that reconnection that she has with Adrian was also a really powerful scene, because she could have chosen to be angry, but instead she like decides to support the world of love. The scene where the bees come into play and they basically go in and strip a bunch of renegades of their powers, that was also fascinating. I think at the end, what Max does in terms of choosing to release the power rather than keep it, that was also beautiful to read as well. And I just think that in general, this story was beautiful. I think the part that absolutely broke my heart is the fact that at the end of the book, we realized that Nova and Magpie are actually related and they don't know it themselves. And I think that broke my heart quite a bit. I do hope that eventually in a future story somewhere, or a crossover somewhere, maybe they find their way to each other. But I just think it's so sad that these two sisters have been separated by so much tragedy. Although I guess Nova doesn't deserve a completely happy ending, considering she was an arch nemesis, you know. But at the same time, even though she was an anarchist, I do think there's a lot to be said about the fact that she still never killed anyone. She never wanted to hurt anyone. She still wanted to save all the children and all those things. So I just think Nova is such a beautiful character. Overall, I just think this series was absolutely excellent. I think the amount of emotions that they go through as characters in terms of the romance, the situation with Calum and his loss, like that was heartbreaking for sure. I think just in general, this story was just so beautiful. And I think at the end of the day, it just came back to this idea of wanting to be family and just having this ideology for what a better world looks like. And then eventually just putting down your crazy zealot ways and finding a way in the middle. And I think it was just so beautiful, and it definitely gave me hope, and it definitely put a smile on my face, and I absolutely loved this book. This was a solid 5-star read for me. I cried reading it, I smiled reading it, I giggled reading it, and I absolutely loved it. I was not expecting to find a 5-star in this collection of books that I was reading. I do know a lot of young adult books, like I said, actually pack quite a punch, and I do enjoy them, but they typically tend to be between 3 to 4-star reads for me. So it was really beautiful to be able to find a 5-star read and have as much emotional range that I did with this book. And that basically brings me to the end of this lovely series review. So overall, I would say the series probably ranks right around a 4.25 for me. I think it's absolutely excellent. I do think if you pick this up, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to get sucked into the world. It's just so much fun. And if you're a sci-fi junkie, then this is definitely your collection of books. And I do think this was the perfect way to finish up the month as I'm reading, because we are moving forward into a sci-fi filled month. So that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If this was your vibe, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell. Just in case you didn't get a chance to watch what I read in a month, I will definitely post the link to that video here. And then for those of you that are interested in potentially seeing some of the other series reviews that I've done, you can definitely check out the playlist there too. But otherwise, yeah, I would love to see you guys back. Again, I put videos out every Wednesday and Sunday. For those of you who have been with me since the beginning, for those of you who are subscribing, for those of you who see the joy of what we're trying to create here, it means the world to me that you're here. So please leave comments below. Please let me know what your thoughts are. Please let me know if you've read the series. Please let me know if there's anything you think I should read and share, because it's about a community, and I'm so excited to create with you. And that being said, I will catch you guys on the flip side. So wherever you are, night, evening, or morning, I hope you have a wonderful day. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.